and read the scenario that's listed there. The town of Indianola, Mississippi, wants to know what the community thinks about building a high-tech movie theater. Increased taxes will be used to pay for the new theater. Therefore, elected officials are mailing out questionnaires to determine public opinion about the theater and the use of increased taxes to pay for it. What type of research methods are they using? So application questions present you with a situation, then you're going to apply the information to the situation. So is it a case study, an experiment, a survey, or correlation? What's the key term in that to get your answer? In all of that verbiage, what's the key term? Questionnaire. Good, right. So you look at the word questionnaire and then you say, what type of research is done with a questionnaire? Now, I didn't necessarily use that term, though, right? So this is where your vocabulary comes in. So what else is another word for a questionnaire that we covered? And it's listed right up there. So hopefully you get this all right. All right, so why don't you put your answers in? All right, we got it. Everybody put their answer in there. It's 46, 47. Going once, going twice. Got it. All right, so 91% of you correct. Right, it's a survey method. So the questionnaire is another name for a survey, and people are going to mail it out to try to figure out what the community wants to do. And it's a legitimate form of research that's there. The last thing I want to talk about in this chapter is something called the placebo effect. The placebo effect can affect research and really destroy your research. A placebo is an inactive substance given in the place of a drug in psychological research or by physicians who wish to treat a complaint by suggestion. So, what's a placebo? Placebo is a pill given to somebody and you tell the person, this is what's going to happen if I give you this. And then the people begin to believe that. So if I was doing a survey on the effect of vodka, okay, on learning, okay, what I could do is say, all right, I'm going to give you all some vodka, and what I'll do is I'll mix it with orange juice, and some of you, it's bad vodka, so you won't be able to taste it. So what winds up happening is that some people think they get the vodka, okay, and they, oh, I've got the vodka, and then they start acting drunk, okay, and they'll destroy your whole survey that way. That's also called a cheap drunk, okay? You go out with somebody and they have one little drink and they act like they're drunk. So, but winds up happening, people begin to think that. Physicians sometimes will do this. Now, it's unethical to do this, but some physicians just say, well, it helps the person. If you have someone who's a chronic complainer who comes in like every couple of weeks with, oh, my back hurts, my knee hurts, my ankle hurts, sometimes physicians will say, oh, well, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, last time you were here, I gave you that pill. Did that work? Oh, yeah, doctor, that worked really well. Well, I got the same one. It's just a little different, but this one really helps people who have ankle problems. And what you're going to give them is a sugar pill. There's nothing in it whatsoever, okay? But it looks like a pill, and you tell them it's going to work, and then what happens? It works. Their pain goes away. Why? Because their pain is up here in their head. Okay? They're imagining they have those pains. And it's called the placebo effect. When they do research with medication and they want to see how well, let's say, an antidepressant works, one of the things they'll do, they'll give a placebo to some people, but tell them it's an antidepressant, and then give the real antidepressant to somebody else and see if there's any difference that's there. Hopefully, right, the people given the medication that's nothing in it won't have any help with their depression, but the people who have the medication will. But you know what? With antidepressants, antidepressants also have a high placebo rate. Okay? Sometimes people, when you tell them here's a medication, it'll help you with your depression, they think it will, and their depression lifts. That's there. Matter of fact, most people, when they're put on what's called the SSRIs, which are the newer form of antidepressants, okay, those antidepressants don't usually work for about 6 weeks. Now, for someone, it may be 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but it takes a while to build up in their system. But some people, they take it in the morning, and all of a sudden in the afternoon they say, gosh, I feel much better. These pills really work. And then you look at them and go, that's not what the research says. It says it's supposed to take a while. But if you're a physician, or even the person that's all of a sudden gets help with their depression, what's the difference? It works for them. So remember when I talked about biopsychosocial? Okay? Well, the psychological part is a placebo that could change the way people think and feel and behave just by the thought of it. Just by the thought of it. When we cover the section on drugs and we cover hypnosis, hypnosis also works that way. Okay, when you give someone a suggestion that something's going to happen, you change their perception, and a lot of people just believe it. A lot of people just believe it. Like right now, you know, it's really hot in here right now, and a lot of you don't realize that, but after a while, some of you will take off your jackets and your scarves and things like that, and it really will start getting warm. Do you feel like it's getting warm right now? No? Okay. Who knows? All right, example would be sugar pills or saline injections when you tell people these things occur. All right, so that's really the end of this chapter. So those of you who read the chapter will realize I didn't cover everything. All right, I left some things out. I left the section out about what do psychologists do. I left the section out where we talk about pseudopsychology and astrology and things like that. So I can't cover the whole chapter, but when I talk about the chapter in class, I'm probably covering about 80 to 85% of what will be on your test. So I'm covering most of what's going to be on your test, but please make sure you read the whole chapter, because you never know what kind of questions I'll throw on there that I haven't covered in class. Let's see if you remember this one. This is not in your chapter, but something that we've talked about. Sharing expectancies are important because of what? Boundaries are established. Each member of a relationship will understand what the other person wants. Roles are defined. All of the above. Now, sometimes I'll put a question on the test that's not in your chapter, but it's just something we covered in class. See if I can take you back in your memories. This is the very first thing I talked about in this class. What did I talk about it in regards to? The what? Marriage, right? I'm talking about that. That's good. That was an example I used. But I was talking about the syllabus, wasn't I? Right? I talked about the syllabus, and I said we're about ready to enter into a relationship, right? And when you're in marriage or in a job, we talk about expectancies. So once again, when you study for things, you need to be able to take a key term and a word and then associate what I talked about, okay, to come up with this. So why are expectancies important? Is it 1, 2, 3, or all of the above? Looks like you got this answer already. All right, everybody got it? Okay. All right, so the answer is 78% are correct. It's all of the above. Right? Each member of a relationship will understand what the other person wants. Yes, that's true, but roles are also defined. Roles are also defined. That's there. Okay, so it's all of the above. When you have a question like this and you know that 2 out of the 3 are correct, but you're not sure about the third one, go with all of the above, because you got 2 out of 3 already, right? I don't usually ask questions on my test that are things like 1 and 2 is true, but 2 and 3 are not true, or 3 and 4. Those get too confusing, right? So there'll be more clear questions like that. Okay, so that's the end of that chapter. So let's talk about the second chapter, which is on brain biology and behavior. So there it is. There is your essence right there. All right, this is what you're all about. That's your brain. Looks like a big hunk of cauliflower that's there. And a brain could probably fit right in my hand. Okay? Your brain can fit right in my hand. It's about all it is that's there. Did you ever think about thinking? And what you're doing right now, you're thinking, right? How does that take place? What's going on up there in that brain? Where is your essence? Where is your seat of consciousness? What makes you who you are? Right? What's going on? It's all up here, isn't it? This is all how this brain works. Your soul, I guess you can say, is somewhere up in this brain. And this brain is has electrical chemical reactions in it. Right now, as you sit here and think and probably say, what the hell is he talking about anyway? Okay? As you're thinking about it, or you're saying, gee, I'd like to go to sleep right now, it's too cold, he said it's going to be warm, it's really not warm. Whatever you're thinking about right now, it's all played out in this brain that's here. So what we want to do in this chapter is talk about how this old brain works and how just where the seat of your consciousness might be. This is not a question for a point. This is just an opinion question. In terms of the function in different brain regions, what percentage of the brain do you really utilize? Somebody always asks me this. They say, oh, Steve, what percentage of the brain do we really utilize? What do you think? Do we use all of it? Most of it? Some of it? Few of it? None? Hopefully you don't choose none, because that would mean you're dead, right? You're not using anything. You heard the term brain dead, right?
So when someone's in a coma, are they still thinking?
People in a coma are still active, yes. If you hook them up, and they do, because they want to monitor their brain, things are still going on there. What they're thinking about, I don't know. Can't tell you, right? Okay, but they're still functioning, there's still flashing that's there. You see sparks coming on. What does an infant think about? Well, we don't know that either, right? But their brains are very, very active. They spend a lot of time in sleep. Matter of fact, the regions of the brain where we can tell when someone is dreaming by doing, and I'll tell you about the different ways we can look in the brain, we find that infants dream almost 80-something% of the time when they sleep. You and I dream 15-20%, but infants dream, what's that about? What do they dream about? Everything, right? The Super Bowl, things like that, right? Who knows, right? But that brain is still developing. That's there. All right, so your answer to this would be that, we're all over the place, right? All kinds of different answers. Most of you are at some or few. Really, the answer to this is 100%. We do use 100% of our brain. We don't use it all at once, though. Okay? We use it at different times. Even when you sleep, your brain is still active. Okay? It's processed. Right now, if I hooked you up to a functional MRI or a PET scan, what we find is that different areas of your brain are working at different times. Okay? So we use 100% of our brain, but not 100% of the time. Okay? At different times of your life, it's more engaged than others. The more a subject you know, and the smarter you are, or the better you're at a sport or any type of skill, the more efficient your brain is, which also means you use less of your brain. Those of you who are really good at math, and I threw out 6 numbers to add up, and you went, and you got it real quick, your brain doesn't work very efficiently. It works very efficiently. We'd see it light up just a little bit, and do that. Those of you who are trying to figure out the answers, your brain would be like a thunderstorm. It'd be like trying to figure out what's going on because you don't know the answers. People who are smarter, more efficient about skill development and things like that use actually less of their brain to perform it because their brain has gotten wired, and the wiring, the neurons have gotten really tight and what we call efficient. That's there. Well, I'll explain that a little bit more. Here it is. So make sure you copy all this down. No, that'd be too much. What I did, I have other slides that just about every single part of this brain is an arrow to, because I just want to show you that when we look in the brain, different parts of the brain handle different functioning. Yeah.
Back to the previous slide, is that also tied into the motor reflexes?
Yes, the better you're at it. Like if you can play the guitar, okay? And when you first play the guitar, it's going like, what is this? What is this note? What's going on here? And your brain is like really lighting up. But once you learn that, okay, and you got it down, you don't even think about it anymore, right? Because what happens is that once you use the chords, once you're doing this, okay, your brain formed a pattern that's there. You do this part of the brain picks it up, and it's very, very, very efficient. It wouldn't even look like your brain was working that hard if you're that good at it. Peyton Manning, yesterday, his brain was just all over the place. He couldn't figure out what was going on. in that. But just, I mean, if you ever had damage to, let's say, this part of your brain right here, okay, you might have a problem with problem solving. Damage this part, you may not be able to smell so well. Down here would be hearing, visual images, attach meaning and purposes to words, the motor cortex that's there. All different areas of the brain, okay, function differently, and we can pinpoint all of this now. We can show you exactly what's going on in the brain. I think people, if you want to do athletes, and who are really incredible athletes, I think this area of their brain is probably much more developed and much more efficient. Okay? Much more developed and much more efficient that's there. Children who have really good visual, spatial abilities, you know what that is? Being able to see things in space and be able to turn them around. Do you ever have little interlocking gears? Like you turn a gear this way, and there's a gear that's hooked up to this gear, and hooked up to this gear, and hooked up to this gear, and hooked up. Do you ever see those the little kids' games that are that way? And if you turn this gear, then you might ask a child, which way is that gear going to turn, clockwise or counterclockwise? Some people who have incredible spatial ability, like engineers are really good at this, and artists who can see that, can look at those gears and go, oh, counterclockwise. Where the rest of us are going, this one, and we're trying to figure it out. That's there. These people may be, more efficient in their brain. They just do it better. All right? So in this chapter, what we're going to do is cover the bio part of biopsychosocial, as I explained last week. Just the bio part about, in particularly, the brain and how the brain affects how we think, feel, and behave. All right? So the first thing we want to talk about is neurons. Now, some of you have taken anatomy and physiology. Some of you have taken general biology. Some of you have taken it now. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence. Okay? I'm taking this very, very slow. Because most people in a general psych course really don't have a strong biology background. So I'm assuming you know nothing about the brain, and I'm starting from scratch. So when we start from scratch, we start from what's called a neuron. The neuron is the building block of your neurology, of your nervous system that's there. And you have billions of neurons throughout your nervous system. That's quite a bit, billions, right? We throw that number around sometimes. That's a huge number that's there. There are three distinct parts to a neuron. There's what's called the dendrite, the soma, and the axon. So if my left arm was a dendrite, it looked like these big tree roots. And what a dendrite does is receive information from the other neurons. So the dendrite takes in information from the other neurons, it brings it down to the soma. So the soma is the cell body. And then the soma sends messages back out via the axon. So my right arm would be an axon, and it's called the axon terminals, which kind of look like branches. And what they do, if you look at me right now, what they do is that they match up with the dendrites. Dendrites, left hand, right hand axons, and they do this. So each neuron is they're not connected like this, but they're just like this. So what happens, message comes down this way, comes down this way, and then it jumps the gap in between and gives an electrical burst to this dendrite, which sends it back down to the next axon, and so on down the line. If we looked in your brain right now, and if you're really thinking about things, what we'd see is this like a huge electrical storm. All kinds of electrical impulses that will then turn or engage little sacs, and I'll explain this a little bit more, that then release all these chemicals in your brain. Because your brain is really electrical chemical interactions. The essence of who you are is based on electrical chemical reactions. I don't mean to insult you all, but that's who we are. Electrical chemical reactions. Just to show you this, all right, so here's, message comes down, comes out, axon terminals. These are going to be the dendrites, like tree roots that pick it up, the cell body. Another picture of the dendrites. And what you wind up having is that they never really connect. They're not tied this way. There's always what's called a gap in between a dendrite and an axon, as it shows you up there. There's always a gap that's there. And this gap, okay, is full of chemicals. Remember the other day I talked about serotonin and available serotonin? Well, in between these gaps are all these chemicals that are there. What winds up happening is you have an axon that's here, and at the end of the axon there are these little chemical sacs. And there are, each neurochemical you have in your brain has its own individual sac. Okay, its own individual sac. So when an electrical impulse comes down, it hits this sac, okay, and it helps the sac burst open with neurochemicals. So here comes serotonin being released in between the gap between the dendrite and the axon. So now over here you have a dendrite, and the dendrite has what's called receptor sites. These are the little receptor sites, and there's a different receptor site per neurochemical. So there's just receptor sites for serotonin, and that's it, or just dopamine, and that's it. So all this chemical is floating around here. The other day I said to you, people who are very happy probably have a lot of available serotonin. What I mean by that, available, it's just floating around out here. Okay, it's just floating around up here. Sooner or later, what happens, the dendrite is going to take this in, and it hooks up, kind of locks it way in, and as it locks it way in, this is kind of weird, but it's converted from chemicals into electrical impulses, and then goes down the next one that's there. The essence of who you are, how you think, feel, and behave is right here. It's through all of this complex neurochemical electrical reactions that's there. Some neurochemicals speed things up, some slow it down, some distort your perception, some reduce pain. I mean, it's all kinds of aspects that go on in this area. When you take a neurochemical, physicians don't know enough about the brain or about neurochemicals. All we know, this stuff works. Okay, we know it works. But there's a little experiment going on with you, because there's different types of antidepressants, and they work a little differently in the brain, and we don't know about your brain. So if I was a physician and I gave you a antidepressant, I'd say to you, well, take it for 6 weeks, take it in the morning for 6 weeks, and then let's come back and let's check to see how you're doing. So you do that, you come back and you say, I don't feel any different. I still feel kind of depressed. The physician then would say, all right, let's take the same one, but let's increase the dosage. Let's get more available serotonin out here, okay? Let's increase the dosage, and maybe we'll take it in the afternoon or the evening. What they're doing is they're playing with your brain a little bit to try to see what may work. Now, there are two different types of ways that you can increase the availability of serotonin. There's one type of antidepressant that releases more serotonin. It just helps the brain release more serotonin, and it kicks it out there. There's another type of antidepressant that slows down the uptake. Okay? It doesn't vacuum it up as quickly and keeps it out here like that. So sometimes you'll be on one antidepressant and it just doesn't work. So they'll say, well, let's try you on something different. Well, when they try you on something different, what it'll be, it may slow down the uptake of that stuff or release it more. We just don't know what may work for you. So if you ever get on an antidepressant and you say, oh, this just doesn't work, well, you might want to change it, okay? And they can change it with you to see which one works. It's a big experiment because we don't know enough about your brain, because everybody's brain is just a little bit different. That's there. Every time you take any type of drug, okay, what it's going to do is change the neurochemical interaction that's there. So if you take a central nervous system depressant like alcohol, what it's going to do is slow down the messages in here and distort how you think, feel, and behave. If you took a stimulant It stimulates all this, different changes of neurochemicals, stimulates, okay, the reaction from one neuron to another, changes the way you think, feel, and behave. So any time that you take any type of drug, if you want to call it that, okay, it's going to change the interactions here. That's the. When you start thinking depressive thoughts, okay, like, another cold day, when's it ever going to get warm again? When you start doing that, somehow or another, and I don't know how, okay, you start thinking about that. I know where it is. It's right here, your frontal lobes, where you think. Starts thinking, and your brain just goes, well, I guess we need to slow ourselves down. And it actually changes the release of the neurochemicals that are there to slow you down, and then you might then perceive it as getting tired, depressed, or whatever else. It's all an interaction that's there. All right, that's it. I'll take my time explaining this one. That's a lot to write down, all right? Neurotransmitters transmitting information in between the neurons. These are chemicals that transmit information through the neurons, are chemical substances secreted by a neuron that alters activity in other neurons, slow it down, speed it up, distort it. There are other types of neurotransmitters in your brain besides the ones I was just talking about. One is called neuropeptides. These regulate the activity of other neurons. Examples would be like enkephalins. Here's a key word, are opiate-like chemicals that regulate pain and stress. Endorphins are chemicals released by the pituitary gland that help reduce pain. So in your brain, you normally have opiate-like neurochemicals that reduce pain. These are called enkephalins. Also, endorphins are under that category as well. Those of you who are athletes and you were told to play through pain, most athletes are told that, right? Play through pain. One of the things you're doing is that you're engaging neuropeptides in your brain, particularly endorphins, so that you don't pay attention to the pain. Your brain will naturally do this for you. It is part of our survival mechanism that helps us to survive. I'll say this a couple of times during the semester. We are still animals out in a dangerous world, and our brains are going to try to help us survive in a dangerous world. So your brain sometimes automatically, okay, is going to release these neurochemicals without you thinking about it. I'm not going to do this to myself, but if I pinched myself, automatically I'd feel pain. Boom, without me thinking about it, my brain is going to start releasing endorphins and enkephalins so that I don't feel this pain that much. So at those neurotransmitters, what happens? It gets full of available endorphins so that a message from one neuron to the next about pain starts slowing down, and I don't feel that as much. That's what aspirin does, by the way, when you take it. Right? It just slows down those messages so you don't feel the pain. I can't say I'm a runner anymore. I don't run that much. I jog, okay? But I get up Monday through Friday, like at 4:20 every morning. And I exercise, then I go out and run, which is dumb, okay? So I've been running too long. I wear a brace on my knee, and I'm out there I probably get out by 4:45. So it's cold, right? In the morning, it's dark, it's cold. I'm out there running, I start running. And once I start running, I feel my ankles hurt, my knee hurts, my back hurts. I'm just in pain, okay? My unconsciously, key word, unconsciously, my brain's probably going, why are we running? It's 4:45 in the morning. Why are we doing this? Oh my gosh, we're probably being chased. Okay, that's why he's running. He's in danger. We need to save him. So the first thing that happens is that my brain starts releasing these endorphins to start what? Reducing the pain that's there. And I'm running, and as I run, for me, I've been running long enough in my life that once I get to around 2 miles, all of a sudden my brain is probably full of endorphins. I no longer feel the pain. And what I'm really into now is something called a runner's high. Because what endorphins are opiate-like substances And I'm out there smiling and just having a good time, looking at the moon. Somebody had their sprinkler system going and it froze their yard. As I was running, I was going, that's pretty dumb. Okay, and I'm running along and just flowing. Okay, and then all of a sudden I stop and no one else is around. I'll tell you this looks really odd. When I'm done, I do a little what's called behavioral reinforcement. I go, good job, Steve, another day. You're out there running. All right. Okay, so I'm feeling good. I go back in my house, feeling great, right? I still got this runner's high that's there. Those of you who are athletes will know if you get into a zone, into your performance in your game, you don't usually feel pain. Okay? It's usually gone. If you talk about the Super Bowl, there are people in the Super Bowl before who've broken their legs. Okay? During the first quarter and played the second quarter, and at halftime they ran into the locker room and then they sat down and they couldn't get up again. They go, my leg, it really hurts. What's going on? Well, what's going on? They broke their leg, right? Broke their leg, but they didn't feel it. How about this one, women? When you give birth, your brain releases more endorphins and kephalins than you'll ever release in your life. Not that it helps with the pain, but it helps a little bit that's there. Endorphins, just released naturally, that comes in, right? And it induces these really feel-good feelings that are there. Don't copy this down, all right? I just want to show you many, many different types of neurotransmitters and their effects on you. Endorphins are for pain reduction and reward, also for reward. So when I do this, good job, Steve, I feel good psychologically, but also I'm feeling pretty good as well. If you are addicted to something, like let's just say shopping, if you go shopping and when you shop, as you shop, if you're feeling good, I love shopping, okay, and as you're doing that, your brain is releasing endorphins. That's part of what makes you feel good that's there. All right? So any of these, norepinephrine, arousal, alertness, epinephrine, energy, and so on down the line. All these different neurochemicals, okay, when released in your brain will have an effect on how you feel. Let's talk more about the brain. The brain has a process called plasticity, which basically means it's the capacity of the brain to change in response to experience. Plastic, we can mold. The brain can be molded, can be sculptured. Each and every time you do something, over and over and over again, your neurons are actually going to change, move around, and line up. When you are young, okay, all your neurons are laid out in a basic structure. You may have a genetic predisposition, which strengthens some of those neurological connections. But every time you do something and do it over and over and over and over again, it strengthens those connections. And those neurons will actually move around. The question he asked before was, if you do something over and over again, what happens? Well, if it becomes unconscious, those neurons line up so you don't think about it anymore. It just becomes very efficient. Every experience you have, if you do it again and again, or every thought that you have, if you have it again and again and again, will increase neurological connections. If you think depressive thoughts over and over and over again, your neurons get lined up to make it even easier to have depressive thoughts. If you're a young child and you're exposed to a lot of stress in your life, your brain gets wired to respond to stress. So later on in the life, okay, you are going to be more stressful than other people. Those children that you have, their brains are at your mercy. Okay? You can rewire those brains by basically what you say, what you do, and how you expose those children. Okay? Did you know that your brain is not fully developed ever in your life? It's always rewiring and rechanging with the things that you do. Did you know that the cognitive part of your brain that allows you to make logical, rational answers, which is the frontal lobes up here, is not fully developed until your mid-20s? When your parents said to you when you were 16, what were you thinking when you did that? And you said, I don't know. Okay? That was actually a good answer. Because your brain at 16 is not fully wired to make logical, rational decisions. Your brain is better wired to make emotional decisions, because that's what develops first in this part of the brain. So that brain keeps developing throughout your life. Change the way you think will change the wiring. Change the wiring will change the way you think and behave. Neurogenesis means the production of new brain cells. Your brain is constantly making new brain cells. So if you killed a couple of hundred yesterday, okay, you may be able to regenerate them in the next couple of weeks that are there. And I did not say this, by the way, about 15 years ago. We used to say whatever brain cells you were born with, that's what you had. Kill a couple of thousand, you just lose them. But what we do know is that through neurogenesis, your brain is constantly producing new neurons. Mirror neurons is a newer research that tells us that neurons are activated when actions are merely observed. Okay? So just by watching something, you can change the neurological connections. It's not just by doing, by watching. If someone is a figure skater, and the Olympics are starting, this week, I think, okay? And they hurt their leg and they can't practice for 2 weeks, if they have wired their brain already for practice for years, they don't have to practice that week. All they would have to do is watch videos of themselves doing whatever they're doing perfectly, and that would help strengthen that neurological connections that are there. Those of you who are athletes will also know videotape training, okay, or looking at recordings and DVD things works amazingly if you can see yourself do it perfectly because of something called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are also the basis of empathy. You know what empathy is? Feeling what other people are feeling, okay? Right? I feel your coldness, okay? But feeling what other people are feeling. People who are sociopaths, you know that term? We also call them antisocial personalities. These are the kids you went to school with, like about 7 years old. Everybody went, don't go around that kid. That kid's evil. Okay? These are the kids that torture animals and things like that. They have no compassion for anybody else. They have no empathy. When we look in their brains, they have either no mirror neurons or very few mirror neurons. Something happened as they were getting older. Now, hopefully you're sitting there thinking along with me, what comes first? Lack of mirror neurons in their brain, or is it something in their environment, okay, that triggered that? It's probably both. It's probably both. Still with me? Let's see, for 1 point. The part of the nerve cell specialized for conducting information is what? What's one part of the nerve cell? So the key term is part. A part of the nerve cell that's specialized for conducting information. Is it the axon, the thyroid, the somata, the neurolemia, or the megaphone? Which one is the correct answer? Now, as you answer this question, you also need to know when you take multiple choice tests, a lot of professors are going to put on, they're going to throw some words in there that are called distractors. We want to separate out the people who know it and don't know it. And a distractor is an answer that kind of looks like a good answer. But if you really don't know it, okay, if you don't know the answer, you may pick the distractor that's in there. People who really know the answer will go right for it. And this, if you think about this question, this is a really easy question. If you think about what I'm asking you to do. Parts of a neuron. So right now your brain should be, you're sitting there in the testing center taking the test, and you see the question, the key term is parts of a neuron. And right away your brain should think, what are the parts of the neuron? Give me the parts of the neuron, out loud.
Axon.
That's one. What's another one? Dendrite, soma, right? Those are 3 parts of a neuron. So right now my brain is going parts of the neuron. I'm not even looking at the question yet. I mean at the answers. I'm first looking at the question, parts of a neuron, the axon, soma, dendrite. Okay, I got it. Now let me look through the answers that are here. Now you're saying, well, which one is conducts and which one doesn't conduct? Doesn't really matter, does it? It does matter, but not for the answer, and I'll tell you in a second. All right, everybody got this? I didn't get to 56 yet. Somebody didn't do it, so are you ready? There we go. Come on. Somebody wake up. Okay, I got it. 1, 2, 3. All right, so 73% of you are correct. Now, why did I say this is an easy question? Obviously it wasn't, if only 73 got it right. The 3 parts of a neuron are the axon, is that one of the answers? The dendrite, is that one of the answers? The soma, is that one of the answers? No. No, it's a distractor. It's a somata, whatever that is. Okay? Remember I said to you, watch out for distractors? Okay, so there is something called a somata, but that's not in this. It's the dendrite, the axon, or the soma. Okay? Soma's not listed there, so it's the axon. Sometimes if you don't know the material, or if you take the multiple choice question and you do it too quickly, and you go, what conducts? Which one is it? And you're going to get distracted and pick the wrong answer. So what I'm asking you to do is take your time and think it through. But I look at all of you and say, take your time. The 27% who got it wrong. All right, let's continue on. Let's talk about the central nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. Here it is, the brain, central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord. Looks like an armadillo. Okay, here's the arm. The long tail that's there. Brain, spinal cord. Now, if you were taking A and P, then I would say to you, you need to memorize the 5 lumbar nerves, and on and on and on. In this class, when I say, what is the central nervous system, you say, oh, it consists of the brain and the spinal cord. That's all you need to know. Okay, the brain and the spinal cord. Look at this picture over here. We have the brain, the spinal cord, and then what comes off from the spinal cord and the brain is the peripheral nervous system. So messages start up here, decisions are made, and then sent out through the nervous system to different parts of your body, telling your body to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. All right, the peripheral nervous system carries information to and from the central nervous system, as what I just showed you on the previous slide. There are 2 parts to the peripheral nervous system. One is called the somatic system, and it carries messages to and from the sense organs and the skeletal muscles. And here's the key word, it guides voluntary activities. So the somatic system guides voluntary activities. So somewhere up here, I just decided to pick up my arm. So I say, Steve, pick up your arm. Well, the somatic system sends a message down to my shoulder to pick up my arm. Then I'm going to say, wiggle my fingers, and I wiggle my fingers. All that message goes through what? The somatic system, because it controls voluntary aspects. Now, if I can't wiggle my fingers, then what? There's something wrong. We just back it up somewhere in my nervous system, in my hands, my arms, my shoulder. Boom, back to the spinal cord, back up to the brain. There's some distortion there somewhere. If you think of an electrical system, there's some short somewhere in there that doesn't allow that to happen. And people know enough about the brain that they can trace that back and find out what goes on. When somebody has a stroke, which a stroke is basically some damage to the brain, and if this damage is done like over here to my motor functioning, and I can't lift my right arm anymore, they can pinpoint where the stroke is. They can pinpoint where it is just by not doing that. But through physical therapy, and I mentioned this before, through physical therapy, because the brain has plasticity to it, if I go through rehab and they start picking up my arm and doing this for me, sooner or later the brain is going to change and a new part of the brain is going to take over so I can eventually raise my arm once again. Even though there's damage to one part of my brain, that part of the brain's not functioning anymore. It's dead. But another part of the brain may take over that functioning. That's another example of plasticity in the brain. That probably gave you enough time to write all this one down already. All right, the part in psychology we learn a lot, and you better learn this in this slide now because I'm going to cover this 2 more times during the semester. It's called the autonomic system. Carries messages to and from the internal organs and the glands, and it controls involuntary activities. Do you remember my statement? We're still animals out in the wild trying to survive. This is all about survival mechanism. It's called the autonomic system, and it has 2 parts to it, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic part of the branch of the autonomic nervous system is the emergency system that prepares the body for fight or flight. Get that? Automatically, your brain goes, oh my God, it's dangerous, something's going on. And you don't even think about it. Messages go out to prepare your body to fight or to flee. So let's say I took you people back 7,000 years ago. And we're out here in North Texas, and we have a meeting of the clans. All the various clans are coming from all over, and we have this big meeting. And what you all need to realize is when humans get together, what do? They like to have a good time. So when you were having a good time yesterday at a Super Bowl party, or you were out this weekend dancing and everything else, that's what they were doing 7,000 and 8,000 years ago when they got together. Okay? They came together. And the people in the first 2 rows went out there and they got us some fruits and vegetables. Next 2 rows went out and they killed a woolly mammoth. And then the next 2 rows behind them, they're the barbecue people, and they're cooking us up some woolly mammoth burgers and steaks and stuff. And the people in the last row, okay, found these grapes, okay, and they put them in this big vat for a while, and they fermented them a little bit, and now we have a nice Cabernet to drink, okay, because that's our wine. So we're out there, what, eating and probably drinking, because the people have always done that, okay, and playing music. Okay, humans have always played music. Okay, so when you were out dancing this weekend and stuff, people have been doing that forever when they got together. They were just having a party. So we're having a good time and everything, and out of the corner of your eye, she sees 2 saber-toothed tigers coming into camp. Because remember, at one time we were not on top of the food chain. We were part of the food chain, and they were coming to eat some nice human meat. Okay. So she jumps up and she says, wagga, 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 okay, which in the ancient language basically means look out, okay? And as soon as she screams that out, your brain, the sympathetic part says, oh no, danger, and your body gears up to grab your spear and fight, or for some of you, just take off, okay? The rest of those people way back when, who didn't have an active sympathetic branch, went like this. Oh, wow. Saber-toothed tiger. Ugh! They've got eaten. Okay? Those people who don't respond to, you ready? Here's what the word we use now, stress, are out. We don't have them in our genetic pool anymore. Most of us react to stress. Fight or flight. Danger, fight or flight. And this is what happens to you automatically. Your pupils are going to dilate. Ah, look out. You don't want to lose too many fluids because we need it for other indices down here, so you're usually not going to be able to cry. It's going to inhibit your ability to salivate. Okay? You're going to activate sweat glands to cool your body down because you're what? Fighting or fleeing. Increase your heart rate, increasing respiratory rates. Going to inhibit digestion. So that woolly mammoth burger you just had that's sitting in your stomach and intestines may lead to what? Indigestion, all kinds of stomach problems because it's just laying there. It becomes a Maalox moment or something, all right? Because it's just laying there. You need what? Adrenaline to get you up to flight or to flee. Okay? Need sugar for energy from your liver. It's going to relax your bladder a little bit. So if you haven't gone to the bathroom recently and you're running, you may have a little accident. That's also why little kids, when they first learn to become toilet trained, when they get excited sometimes, they have little accidents because they haven't learned to control their bladders, particularly under stress just yet. It inhibits elimination, which means defecation. You're not going to do that. It'll inhibit your genitalias from working. Men will not get erections under the sympathetic reaction unless they have something going on with saber-toothed tigers or something like that. They might get excited. Women will not lubricate because under the sympathetic reaction, it's fight or flight, right? You're trying to save yourself, not have sex, okay? And it'll reduce a man's ability to ejaculate. So later on this semester, when we talk about sexual dysfunctions and issues and problems, a lot of it has to deal with anxiety, too much anxiety. So there you are, gearing up to fight or to flee. Fight or to flee. And then when we kill the saber-toothed tiger or we get away, when it's all over with, the parasympathetic comes in and quiets the body and reduces arousal. So parasympathetic on the other side slows everything down. And this is done automatically. Danger, boom! Fight or to flee. It's involuntary. Okay? Now what happens to us nowadays, it's called stress, right? Did I tell you I changed the date of the test and your test starts tomorrow, even though I'm not going to cover the first 3 chapters? No. Now, some of you who really care about your grades might get a little pang of anxiety. Those of you going, he's an idiot. Okay, you're kind of mellowed out. It didn't react to that. But get on LBJ and have somebody cut in front of you. That'll do it, right? You don't think about it. Car doesn't cut in front of you, and you go, oh, look, car cutting in front of me. I need to slam on the brakes. You don't do that. You just automatically react. And you have all that stress as well. Fight or flight. It's still around, buried deep in our brains. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the brain. The brain weighs only about 3 pounds. All right, so if you're 400 pounds, is it still 3 pounds? No, it's probably 3 pounds and a quarter or something like that. All right, it's still about 3 pounds. The brain weight ratio is about 1 to 60. 1 to 60. Why did I put that on there? That's a weird ratio. What we find, other animals that have about a 1 to 60 ratio seem to be smarter in the animal kingdom. Okay? Humans, we think we're the smartest. But dolphins and porpoises seem to have a 1 to 60 brain ratio. That's there. And they do have a system of communication where they communicate with each other. They do use tools. They can put things in their mouths to nudge things away. Okay? They do seem to use tools as well. And they do seem to communicate in pods and in communities that are there. The other animals is going to be chimps and monkeys and apes. And they have their own communication. You can teach a chimpanzee a sign language, and that the chimp then will teach their offspring sign language, which is a sign of intelligence that's there. They also use tools to build things to help them forage for food, so they seem to be intelligent as well. And then somebody in my other class was telling me also that crows also have a form of intelligence, that they also use tools to get bugs out of grounds and stuff like that. I think that's true. I haven't looked that up. So I do know that dolphins, porpoises, elephants, by the way, seem to be pretty smart as well. All right, how do we know about the brain? How was I able to show you a picture before of saying this is where this is the seat of auditory aspects or visual? It's because we can look in the brain now. We can do what's called CT scans. You know what these are, computed tomography scans. Some of you had these done. Okay, they're enhanced x-rays. We have MRIs. You know what MRIs are. Those of you who are athletes probably got injured before and had an MRI. Their magnetic resonance imaging gives us 3D pictures of the brain. PET scans, positron emission tomography. We look at brain activity. Okay, we look at brain activity. Okay, actually can peek in there and see whose brains are active right now. Okay, those of you who your eyes are closing, you're not very active. Okay, but most of you are probably pretty active. You can do that. The one they use a lot in psychology is called a functional MRI. It records brain activities, okay, an MRI, but also brain activities, where we can actually go in and see that a male's brain is a little different than a female's brain. We can find that when people are solving complex math problems, we can look and see what they're doing as well. So if I can get this to connect, I'll show you just a quick 3-minute YouTube video. No, this is actually New York Times, if I can get this to work, on how they do a functional MRI. Come on. You can do it.
We've been using MRI machines for the last 10 to 20 years to try to look at brain function and starting to look at brain connectivities. What I do is look at how the different parts of the brain work together to produce behavior. And I think that's the most simple way to think about the connectome. It's about how does the brain work together? And is there something about how well those different parts of the brain talk to each other that helps you do certain kinds of behaviors?
The Human Connectome Project, which Dr. Bark is a part of, is one of many that mark a surge forward in neuroscience. In fact, in April of 2013, President Obama announced the BRAIN Initiative with $100 million budgeted for the first year.
Giving scientists the tools they need to get a dynamic picture of the brain in action and better understand how we think and how we learn and how we remember.
What we're doing in this project is pretty different in a couple ways. We have really state-of-the-art techniques and equipment that are going to let us do this in a much finer-grained way than has ever been done before. We're going to be studying approximately 1,200 individuals across a wide range of things like education levels and income levels, people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds, so we can have a much better sense of the kind of true normal range of brain connections.
You can't be claustrophobic doing these studies. Just look what you're going into.
So what Jim's going through is similar to what a typical participant would do in one of our studies.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
They do 4 different MRI sessions that each capture different pieces of information. So we have one MRI session that really focuses on getting very high resolution pictures of brain structure. Then they do a couple MRI sessions where we look at what we call resting state functional connectivities. They're spontaneous fluctuations in brain activity that occur over time. And we're interested in measuring those and using it to understand which areas of the brain are kind of fluctuating together. Then we also have people do some specific cognitive tasks while they're in the scanner to understand what parts of the brain are active when people are processing certain kinds of information or doing certain memory tasks or remembering things. We have people listen to language and process language. We have people do math. We have people look at emotional faces.
Okay, great. So we're going to start with the second one of that same test. So just double check what you get.
We have people watch videos that have social interactions in them and look at the parts of the brain that respond to social cognition. And then the last scan session that people do is using a particular technique called diffusion imaging that is really trying to get at mapping that highway system in terms of those white matter connections between different parts of the brain. You know, one of the things I think we're really hoping comes out of this is to understand early indicators of when people might be starting to have difficulties with brain connectivity. I mean, some of it is just basic science, trying to understand how the brain works and how the brain contributes to how we behave, but a lot of it has clinical application.
So I want to show you that because not only are they figuring out how the brain is working, but now what they're doing with this study, they want to see how those neurons are all connected to each other. And that, I don't know how many decades it's going to take them to do that, because you just think about the billions of connections that are there. But can you imagine if they can do something like that, and let's just say someone is chronically depressed, and we can find where in the brain depression may come from, and then maybe try to rewire some of that for some people. I mean, the possibilities are endless to try to figure this out. Those of you interested in psychology, the younger guy in the blue shirt and the tan pants is basically a graduate assistant, and they get to do a lot of these experiments and sit at the computers and run this stuff that's there. Okay? Sorry. There it is. There's a PET scan. Okay? Showing you someone trying to work through problems. The darker the colors, like the red area over here, is someone who's really thinking hard at trying to solve this problem that's there. They're having a little more problems with this. This person isn't as dark, but they're using big parts of their brain, okay, to come up with a complex problem that they're solving. This one's getting stuck at it, and they're thinking really hard in that one particular area that's there. Okay? I thought this one was interesting. Hook you up to a functional MRI and see if you're lying or not. Because when people are lying, there are different parts of their brain that gets activated when they're lying. It's kind of interesting. Maybe someday we'll... You've heard of lie detector tests, which are really just measure stress reactions, but who knows, someday you can hook up a boyfriend or a girlfriend to this to see if they're lying. You know, there's a lot of ethical considerations to go on with this stuff someday, because I don't know what people are going to do with all this information that they have. Because we can find out a lot about people and their brain, and who's lying, who's not lying. But all right, let's talk a little bit more about the brain. Your brain is actually divided up into two large hemispheres that cover the upper part of the brain. So it's called the cerebrum. The cerebrum is all of this, also called the cerebral cortex. It's all of this, and it's subdivided into two hemispheres. There's the left cerebral hemisphere and the right cerebral hemisphere. So there are two hemispheres in the brain. Cerebral hemispheres control opposite sides of the body. So my right side of my body is controlled by the left cerebral hemisphere, and the right hemisphere controls the left side of my brain. So if I have a stroke and have damage I can't move my left arm, then there's probably something going on in the motor development areas in my right hemisphere. Now, what connects the two hemispheres is something called the corpus callosum. It's a connecting fiber between two hemispheres. So there's a corpus callosum up here that connects the left and right hemisphere. So when I think about something and it originates in the left brain, neurologically it crosses over the corpus callosum and is shared with the other hemisphere, the right hemisphere, and back and forth. So messages go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So let me tell you a quick story. Many decades ago, we did not have any medication that helped control what's called grand mal seizures, or epilepsy. There are two types of seizures, grand mal and petit mal. Grand mal are the very severe ones, petit mal are the smaller ones. We had medication that helped people who had petit mal seizures but not grand mal seizures. And what we told people was, if you had too many of these, you could possibly die, okay, or go into a coma from these. Well, people were trying to experiment with different drugs to try to help this and help these people. Someone by the name of Sperry, the man's name was Sperry, decided he was going to take a different track. What he was going to do is first figure out what happens with a seizure? What happens with a seizure is basically there's a neurochemical malfunction in one part of the brain, let's say right here. What then happens, remember, neuron to neuron to neuron, there's an electrical stimulation that then what activates the next neuron, the next neuron, the next neuron, the next neuron. But because this initial charge had so much energy in it, what happens is the charge hits the next one, the energy starts building. Back and forth, 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 until the wiring can't handle it anymore. Boom! And there's a minor petit mal or a major, grand mal seizure, like an explosion in the brain. All right? So Sperry said, well, I wonder if we can slow that down. Trying to slow it down through drugs, can we do it any other way? Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he said, I wonder if I go in and cut the corpus callosum, sever it, so the message can only go here but can't build up, can only go here, 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 and it won't become great. I wonder if I'll do that. And he did it with mice, then he did it with rats, and then he did it with cats, and it worked. So he published his results, and newspapers got a hold of it, and they went, oh, isn't this interesting? Cut the corpus callosum, you help people. Well, all of the people who are having grand mal seizures, not all, but a lot of them, said, whoa, maybe this might save my life. Contacted Sperry. Now, Sperry was not a medical doctor. He was a biologist, who went, no, I'm not going to go in and cut your corpus callosum. You're a human. I'm just working on cats right now. And they went, yeah, but I may die. So what Sperry did, he got in contact with neurosurgeons, medical doctors, and said, let me show you how to do it. If you guys want to do this, I guess you can. So these people volunteered. Usually when you do research, you start off with mice, and then you move up the evolutionary cycle that's there before you get to humans. But these people went, well, I may die, do me next. And they started doing these surgeries. Cut them, no longer connected, that's there. Well, they said, that's fine. They sent these people out. And then these people came back with very strange stories. One of the funniest stories, and it wasn't too funny for this guy, but was a lawyer who eventually went back to practicing law. He was actually in the courtroom doing this. I got to get this right. Now watch this here. Let me tell you about my client. My client is absolutely innocent. This hand reached over, undid his tie. Let me tell you why she's innocent. She's innocent, started undoing his shirt, and went right down the line, and he's still talking away, and people are looking at him like this. The judge went here, unbuckled himself, pulled down his zipper, and at that point the judge went, whoa, what are you doing here? And he said, well, what are you talking about? He said, look, you're pulling down your pants. You can't do that in my courtroom. And he said, well, what are you talking about? And this hand was just kind of moving around, as if it was independent of his thinking, as if we really might have two brains up here that control different type of functioning. There was another woman who every morning would go in and think about what she's going to wear, and then would reach in with this hand, left side controls the right side, right? Reach in, grab some clothes, but this hand, which is controlled by this brain, would reach in and pull something else out, and she'd stand there going, oh, what am I going to wear? I don't know. Because the two brains wanted to wear something different. This part of the brain was very logical, rational. It's cold out, I'm going to wear something that's warm, maybe darker clothing when it's cold. This hand was pulling out bright, colorful dresses and stuff, sundresses and things like that, because it was kind of cool to wear that. I liked wearing that. And she was like, oh, two brains going on. Split brain, it's called. So they did more research on these people, and what they begin to find that the left brain seems to control language, speech, writing, calculations, and so on down the line, and the right brain seems to be more nonverbal. To simplify this, we say the left brain seems to be more analytical, logical, scientific, and the right brain seems to be more nonverbal, perceptual, more artistic. That's there in that way. Two different brains. Now, By the way, you people haven't had your corpus callosum cut, right? So the two still communicate. This doesn't happen. But what we do find, though, is that sometimes we see a difference between left-handed people, wherever you are, and right-handed people. Left-handed people have a tendency to be more creative, okay? When you look at musicians and artists, writers, okay, and you look at the percentage of people who are in those fields, left-handed people, which makes up about 5 to 10%, depending upon the culture across the world, have a much higher percentage than they should in those fields that are there. So you start thinking, I wonder if the creative process is here, and they have a tendency to access that a little bit more than these people here. Kind of different, isn't it? Kind of interesting to see that goes on. So do we really have two different brains? Yes, we do. There really is two different functioning going on, but we have a corpus callosum that's in contact with each other, so messages go back and forth. That's there, back and forth. All right? Is that interesting? Just real quickly. I mean, that's two different brains that are up there. By the way, at the end of this chapter, they have a little test for you to take to see if you're left brain dominant or right brain dominant. Left brain dominant people have a tendency to be more scientific, logical, rational. Right brain dominant seem to be more musical, artistic, flowing a little bit better in their lives. 2 more minutes. Lobes of the brain. Okay? In the textbook, they have many, many different lobes they're going to talk about. I'm only going to talk about 4 different lobes of the brain. Real simply. The frontal lobe, sense of smell, motor control, high mental abilities such as reasoning and planning. Right here. This is it. This is who we are. Thinking, logic, and rationing. This is what separates us from other mammals and other animals. Our ability to be intelligent, to reason, is all right here. All right here. This is the area that develops last in brain development. If you're a fan of science fiction and people describe creatures from other planets, they usually have really big foreheads. Why? Because the assumption is they're smarter than we are. They got here, and we didn't get to their place. So their brains must be bigger in this area. Logic, rationality, mental abilities, reasoning, planning. Parietal lobe, which is back here, sensations such as touch, temperature, and pressure. Occipital lobe, which is back here, which would be vision. Yesterday in that football game, if anybody got smacked in the back of the head, sometimes that interferes in brain processing. You're still trying to see, but what you see is stars. You ever hear somebody say, oh, my God, I got hit in the back of the head, I see stars. It's an interruption in the brain processing for vision. The temporal lobes are here, the seat of hearing, as well as emotions. We're going to talk about that, as well as language. Gets smacked in the side of the head there, it interferes with your ability to hear, so it distorts your hearing. And sometimes people say they got their bell rung because they hear a ringing sound that's there. And we went through the forebrain and the occipital lobes and the temporal lobes. So I want to continue on talking about the structure of the brain and how the structure of the brain is going to affect and effect what you think, feel, and behave. So in the hindbrain, we're talking about the area way back here in the brain. So the first thing we want to talk about is the cerebellum. The cerebellum is at the very base of the brain, in the hindbrain, and it controls balance and your coordination that's there. Balance and coordination. Get hit in the back of the head, way in the back there, may interrupt that. That's there. We also are beginning to find that when we peek into people's brains, we begin to find that people who have incredible balance and coordination, like athletes or gymnasts, they seem to have a greater connectivity in their brain. Basically, that means that the brain is wired more in a more consistent pattern that's there in these people's brains. those of you who are uncoordinated, you're always tripping all over the place, I kind of wonder if we looked in your brain, maybe you don't have the connectivity that these people do. That's there. So what we look at when we peek in people's brains, we begin to find that if people who have these talents that's there that you and I may not have, could be based on what goes on in the brain. They may have been genetically predisposed to that, and then the environment, okay, sculptured the brain, and those connections got greater. That's there. Or they didn't have it, but they did an activity over and over and over and over and over and over again, which helped it as well. Do you have a question? And then you had a question.
Okay, I'm an athlete. I played soccer, and I had a neck injury.
Yeah.
And after that injury, I had trouble balancing.
Okay.
In sports and everything and running, I did not have any good balance anymore. So would that have messed
That could be it. Let me just repeat what you said because I don't think everybody heard you. She said she is an athlete. I won't say was. She is an athlete. And she played a lot of soccer, but then she had a neck injury. And then after that, she had difficulty running. Her balance was off. Yeah, there's your neck. That could have been very much, especially if you snapped it back. Now, the other problem could have been it might have also be an inner ear aspect because that has a lot to do with balances as well. Yeah, you do find that professional athletes will go that far when they have some injuries to the head, particularly football players, soccer players. People don't realize, we talk a lot about football players and having concussions and stuff. People don't realize the concussions that soccer players have all the time. Get damage to different parts of the brain, it's going to affect your motor abilities and everything else. Very much so. Yeah.
So, I was a gymnast for 3 years and I was pretty good at it.
Uh-huh.
But I'm one of the most clumsiest persons I know. Like, I don't know that.
Well, there could be a difference in clumsiness and coordination that's there. If you're a good gymnast, that's great. Now, how old were you when you were a good gymnast?
15.
15 at the oldest? So 12 through 15?
Well, at the oldest I was
15, 16? 16, that's there. Now, as you get older, remember, if you're not going to continue this anymore, you may have gotten clumsier. Or maybe you were clumsy when you were younger, and then what happened, you started developing and the coordination got better, that's there. Remember, we're also talking about, I don't think you were Olympic gymnasts. Okay. All right, so, those are the people that's who they're doing the research with, okay? The people who have incredible coordination like that. You know who Emmitt Smith was? Okay, Dallas Cowboys running back. They've done studies with him as well, and partly what they find is that the guy had incredible balance. I mean, it'd be real hard to knock him over all the time, and incredible balance that he had. I'm talking about very, very gifted people that's there. All right, the reticular formation, another part of the hindbrain, okay, and here's a picture of the reticular formation. Okay, the reticular formation, okay, is right down here in the brainstem as it comes down. Here's the cerebellum, by the way. And this is what the reticular formation is. You ready? Pay attention. That's it. Okay, the reticular formation helps you pay attention. All right? Stay with me. You with me? That's what your brain does. It says, pay attention. The reticular formation. The reticular formation sends a message, like in this, through the whole brain. Like just what you just did right now. Okay? What happened is that he came in. Is it he? Okay. He came in, okay, and all of you just went, and you looked right over there. What that is the reticular formation says, pay attention to anything that's new, different, interesting, or the big one is dangerous. Okay? Wake up. What is this? Remember, I've said now for the third time, we really are animals out in a hostile world and we're trying to stay alive. This is what this does this too. It's pay attention to anything that's new, different, interesting, loud, bright, anything that's going to shake you up. And then once you identify it, who came in through the door? All right, it's just him. That's okay. And then your brain settles back down again. All right? It's the wake-up call that goes on in your brain. The reticular formation. Boom, wakes you up. Anything new, different, and interesting. Sitting in this class for an hour and 20 minutes isn't new and different, isn't it? And most of you will stay with me for a good 25 or 30 minutes, and then we all start drifting off. Some of you, by the way, drift off in 2 minutes, okay? But some of you stay. It's just hard to pay attention. When we cover the chapter on sensation and perception, I'm going to teach you, if you let me, how to focus, how to be mindful, or how to focus, how to stay with me. Okay, because what winds up happening is that we're all start drifting off because our brains are not wired to pay attention. The reticular formation says pay attention to anything is new, different, interesting, dangerous. Okay, and if it's not, then your brain goes, ugh. Okay, it just doesn't get startled that way. Okay? And all of us in here grew up with television and audio video stimulation. If you took to your great-grandparents who grew up with radio, those people have a different brain. Sorry. Okay? They really do. They can sit and just listen really, really well. If you ever watch some of their television programs that are from the 1940s and 50s and 30s, as they watch television, okay, a lot of those shows have a lot of dialogue in it. People just start talking to each other, and they talk and talk and talk. When you and I watch them, sometimes you're like, oh, this is interesting, and we go to sleep. Because our movies are what? Boom, bang, boom, blow something up, have some more music. Okay, come on, talk some more. Whoop, not much talk. Can't have too much talk. Got to throw some music in there. Because what happens, producers, directors, no, you're not going to sit and just listen to somebody talk to each other for 5 minutes. You'll listen to that for a while, and then you got to throw in a car blowing up, okay, or some type of music that comes in, or change of scenery, because your brain becomes adapted to this. The reticular formation wakes you up. Another example of this is that mothers, if they connect with their infants, become in tune with their infants, and they tell themselves, ready? Tell themselves through the frontal lobes, right, reasoning, I need to pay attention to my baby, particularly when they're sleeping. Okay, because I don't want anything to happen to my baby when they're sleeping. You can have 7 moms in one room, 7 infants in another room, have an intercom system, one baby cries, one mom wakes up, just the one that's her baby. That's it. Why? Because she is so in tune, okay, with her baby. Good mothers do that, all right? Not all mothers, okay? You really get in tune with those babies. Now, by the way, when you do these studies, they're not done very long. One baby wakes up, one mother wakes up. Within about a minute, all the other babies are crying too. So, but you can do that study. Now, here's another interesting little thought. Let's say there's mom and dad are together. They're sleeping over here. The baby's in the other room. Baby cries. Ah! Right? Sound waves come across. Hits mom, hits dad as well, right? Mom goes, oh, baby's crying. What's going on? Need to go in there. Dad sleeps through the whole thing. What's going on? It's a cry of distress, right? Comes in, mom responds, dad sleeps, right? What's with his reticular system? Well, this is what happens. Mom, through the frontal lobes, has said, pay attention. I don't want my baby maybe having sudden infant death syndrome or something like that. No, we don't want anything of that happening. So she's sleeping, but, you know, it's like one part of her brain, the reticular formation, is saying, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. Wakes up right away. Dad, frontal lobes, probably thought to himself, baby cries, she'll get up. I'll sleep through this one. She'll probably get up. Message comes across. Frontal lobes tells reticular system, don't pay attention to that. What? In one ear, out the other ear, right? So mom goes, boom, like that to his ribs, wakes him up, and he goes gets the baby. Okay? That's about the only way. That also means you can train frontal lobes to tell the brain to stay awake. Still with me? You can train yourself to do this. Well, when we get to the chapter on sensation and perception, I'll tell you. All right? But we'll get there. But just for practice, what you might want to do today is that if you find, because this is what we're going to do, okay, if you find yourself drifting off, you want to consciously say, pull it back, pull it back. What is he talking about again? Let me see something, hear, write, do something to pull myself back. All right, because that's going to be the basis of this. All right, let's talk about other areas of the brain. I want to talk more about the forebrain, okay, right up here, okay. They want to talk about the thalamus. Well, let me show you a picture, and then I'll come back for the spelling. All right, well, there's the spelling right there. Thalamus, right up here. There's the spelling of it. Deep in the brain, isn't it? Really deep in the brain. I'm just going to introduce the thalamus now. When we get to the chapter on memory, we're going to talk a lot more about it. But the thalamus seems to be one of the last spots for all sensory information to come up into. So what you see, hear, taste, smell, touch, it comes into the thalamus and then gets separated back out. Since sensory information is coming up through there, when we do the chapter on memory, okay, we're going to talk a lot more about the thalamus and how it assists us in terms of memory. All right, so if I go back, the next thing we want to talk about is the hypothalamus, which is what? Under, hypo means under, underneath the thalamus. So hypothalamus, there's the spelling again there. It's right, look how small, this is so small, right there. This little part of your brain controls thirst, hunger, eating, okay? This is the signal that your brain gets through a feedback loop, okay, that when you're thirsty to feel, I'm thirsty, I need to drink something, okay? When you're hungry, okay, messages come from the hypothalamus to tell you, I'm hungry, I need to eat something. Coordinates with what? Your stomach, blood sugar levels, I'm hungry. When you are full, the hypothalamus sends messages out through neurotransmitters, but also through hormones to say, I'm satiated. I don't need any more food. I'm full. No more for me. Okay? The latest diet pills they have out now will be working on the hypothalamus to try to induce that. That's there. The hypothalamus also controls pleasure. Okay? So when you're doing something that you really like, okay, the hypothalamus is going to go, ooh, we like this, and it's going to release hormones, okay, or tell glands to release hormones, and also neurotransmitters to make you feel good, particularly dopamine, okay, ooh, this is good. Those of you who like to shop, and when you shop, you're going to like, I really feel good when I shop, especially when I buy something. Well, when you buy something and you get that good feeling, the hypothalamus is going, and you go, wow, this is good. I'm feeling good. Seat of your pleasure zones. Those of you who have engaged in sexual behaviors, if anyone here has, and if you've ever had an orgasm, okay, when you have that orgasm, part of the pleasure you feel comes from the hypothalamus. What? Okay, really good. It's part of the stimulation from the hypothalamus. So if we ever learn to control the hypothalamus, I don't know what we'll do. We can rule the world, I guess, in that way. If you're doing a drug that gives you a big euphoric feeling, like heroin or cocaine especially, part of cocaine, the receptor sites in the hypothalamus get stimulated, and boom, you get this electrical chemical rush of feeling good. This little part right there does all of this in your brain, way in the back.
Oh, back to what you were saying, that controls pleasure, and that most diet pills, have to do with that part.
No, the newest diet pills will. Okay, there are a lot of diet pills do other things. Yeah.
It goes also back to the placebo method, right?
The what method?
The placebo.
Yes, the placebo. It can be a placebo method, right? Anything can be a placebo method, right? Anything where your brain, where you're starting to think, oh, this is really working. Oh, absolutely, yeah. But they have, when we get to the chapter when I talk about weight and things like that, I'll show you the parts of the hypothalamus that these pills will stimulate to make you feel full, okay, or to make you feel hungry, okay. Either way, they can do that neurochemically, okay. But yeah, a lot of this has placebo effects as well. All right, so then we'll do the last part of here is called the limbic system, L-I-M-B-I-C, right, as opposed to Olympics, right, which start this week in Russia, but limbic system. What's the limbic system? L-I-M-B-I-C, all of this. This whole, like little C that's here. all of this, is called the limbic system. The limbic system is the seat of emotions. It's the seat of emotions. Those of you who are very emotional, we go to a movie with you, and you sit there and you're crying, you're going, oh, because I'm so happy. You're crying because you're happy? What's the deal here? I don't know, this is so happy. This is a happy movie. Okay? You're an emotional person. That's who you are. My guess is you probably have the connectivity in this part of your brain is probably pretty solid that's there. That's just who you are. You get what I'm saying here? Sometimes it's just who you are. Change it. You shouldn't be so emotional. The hell with you. I am emotional, right? It's just who I am. Give me a break. That's here. Researchers have, and I'm not going to show you exactly where this is, but researchers say different parts of the limbic system, if you stimulate, will make you feel angry, sad, happy, calm, peaceful, whatever emotion you feel. That's there. This one right here, the amygdala, right on the bottom here, is very, very important. When stimulated, sometimes it can make people really, really angry. Okay? Really, really angry. The amygdala is the seat of a lot of emotional aspects. Things get stimulated through those areas. There was a very famous study that was done with a bull, B-U-L-L, a bull. This fellow, I think his name was Delgado, psychologist implanted an electrode in the bull's amygdala. Okay? And then he got into a bull ring with the bull, okay, and stood there, and he had two transmitters. And he stood there, and he zapped the bull once, and got electrical stimulation. The bull just went, and you can actually see this. You probably get online through YouTube and see this. And the bull goes like this, and he looks, and he sees him there, and he's kind of waving at the bull, and the bull just starts charging him. And he stands there like this and waits for the bull to get maybe about 20, 25 feet from him, and then pushes another transmitter and stimulates a different part of the bull's brain, which calms him down. And you just see this bull just go, just stopping about 10 feet away. I mean, he's really 10 feet, that's pretty close between you and I, right? That's close. And he just kind of snorts a little bit and walks away. Gets far enough away, zaps him again, and starts charging him again. Good thing he got his buttons right? Or he'd been in trouble. That's there. Maybe, and by the way, there is some beginning research on this, people who have, I don't know what to say, inconsistent amygdala or a well-connected amygdala have a tendency towards violence. Maybe, that's there, because we know this does have play into certain emotions that's there. So maybe the way we feel has a lot to do with what brain structure. Now, you do realize, as I talk about this, I'm not saying the only reason why people are angry is because of that, right? Biopsychosocial. I'm just doing the bio part right now. Everybody understand that? I just don't want anybody to walk out of here and say, oh, the reason why I'm really an emotional person is because of my amygdala. No, it's many, many, many different things. We're just doing one here. All right, now let's talk about the hormone system. So we talked about neurotransmitters, neurochemicals in the brain, and how it makes you think, changes the way you think, feel, and behave. We talked about the structures in the brain. So now let's talk about the endocrine system, which is hormones, right? These are glands that release hormones, and they also affect how you think, feel, and behave. We've already mentioned the sex hormones, progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, and the effect on human behavior that's there. We mentioned that, I think, the first class that's there. So let's go through some other glands. The first gland we want to talk about is the pituitary gland. Let me show you a picture of the pituitary. In fact, why don't I leave this up, and I'll just point them out to you, because this has the descriptions written down there. The pituitary gland, which is deep in your brain, influences growth and lactation, also regulates the activity of the other glands. Okay? So the pituitary gland may tell the ovaries or the testes to release hormones, to release eggs and sperm. That's there. Pituitary gland is primarily for growth. Most of the time it becomes activated when you're about 10 to 12 years old. And that starts giving you your growth spurts during puberty. Some of you who stayed kind of small, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, 14, and you're still smaller than everybody else, probably late onset puberty, and then all of a sudden you just jumped up 4 or 5 inches or something like that. What happened was that your pituitary gland woke up, okay, and it started releasing hormones to help in that growth factor. That's there. All right, the next one that was on your list was the thyroid gland, right? The thyroid gland. So let's just go down the list. The thyroid gland is right there, and it regulates the rate, the metabolic rate in your body. What is the metabolic rate? Is how energetic are you? How much energy do you need to burn off calories, let's say, all right? How energetic you are, right? Right? A lot of you aren't super energetic, okay, right now, but metabolic rates. I told you I was a practicing therapist. I retired in November from this. But if someone came to me and said, oh, Dr. Link, you know, I just can't do anything. I feel so lethargic. I can't move. I feel so depressed. I don't know what I'm doing. Before I start asking questions like, tell me more about that. What's going on in your life? One of the first things I would do is say, have you gotten a good physical? And they say, what? Physically, I'm fine. It's psychologically I got problems. I said, well, maybe it's not psychologically. Maybe it's physical. Because what we know about people who have an underactive thyroid called hypo, H-Y-P-O, thyroidism, is that they have the same symptoms as people who are depressed. They're lethargic. They don't want to get out of bed. They don't move very much. And here's the big one. They look at food and gain weight. Okay, they just smell it and look at it and they start gaining weight. Why? Because their metabolic rates are very, very low. Then their body is not burning off calories. Hypothyroidism. So why sit and talk to me about your background, your life, and everything else when maybe we can get you on a thyroid pill, Thyroxine, and that might help you with your depression. Make sense? The opposite of that is hyperthyroidism, right? Overactive thyroid. And these people are like this all the time, right? They're really, really anxious. It's like, looks like they have an anxiety disorder. They're not thinking very clearly. They just can't calm down. They can't sleep. And these are the people you go to lunch with, by the way. They eat their lunch, and you haven't finished yours, and they go, do you mind if I finish yours? Because I'm still hungry. These people eat all day long, and they don't gain weight. Why? Because they may have what's called hyperthyroidism, right? They're just burning it off. Now, those of you who are 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, as your brain develops, your brain needs a lot of energy, so your thyroid is really cranking it out. Okay? You're burning off calories. But once you start hitting your 20s, your thyroid starts slowing down. And if you don't change your eating habits, you're still eating, like you ate when you were 16, or you're going to start gaining weight pretty quickly. That's there. Another aspect, and I don't think there's anybody in here who's this age, but when you are premenopausal or menopausal for women, what happens, there's a strong connection, since it's all hormonal that's there, with hypothyroidism, okay? Underactive thyroid. So you're going through menopause, change in estrogen, progesterone levels that are there. Thyroid levels are usually off. So there's a correlation between that and depression, okay? Besides just going through menopause and thinking about it, okay? But also with gaining weight at those years as well, and gaining weight. So we look at the thyroid, how it affects how we think, feel, and behave. The next one on the list is the adrenal glands, right over here, over your kidneys. Secretes hormones that arouse the body and gives you energy. Remember fight or flight? The sympathetic part of the nervous system, right? Kicks in the gear, fight or flight. Well, adrenaline gets released when you're under stress and flows through your body to make you more aware, awake, energetic, and increases your strength as well. But too much of it makes you feel like you have an anxiety disorder. You just can't come down, can't sleep, can't come down, can't sleep. And if you have a malfunctioning adrenal gland and it keeps producing, you're going to feel your heart's going to be beating all the time, like you're constantly under stress. But after a while, what happens, the adrenal gland runs out of adrenaline, so you're buzzing along, and then you just, boom, crash. So you have all this anxiety, and all of a sudden you just feel so bad, like you have depression. That's there. So we see that as a symptom for people who have a malfunctioning adrenal gland. All right, and the last one we want to talk about is on the very, very top, the pineal gland. Helps regulate body rhythms and sleep cycles. Rhythms, right? Aren't our bodies in rhythms? We're all in rhythms. Most of you should be getting into a rhythm on a sleep cycle, going to bed at a certain time, waking up at a certain time. By the way, your body likes this. Those of you who don't do this, okay, there's a high correlation with lack of sleep and weight gain as well as depression. Okay, so your body likes to be in cycles. There's a hormone that's released from the pineal gland, which is called melatonin. Okay, melatonin, when hooked up with the sleep cycle, helps you get to sleep. Melatonin is released when it starts getting dark. Okay? So it starts getting dark. 6, 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Your brain is starting to produce melatonin, and melatonin starts making you sleepy. Okay? It starts making you sleepy. And you start nodding off. Then as light starts coming into your life again, the pineal gland begins to decrease the release of melatonin, and you begin to wake up. People who live in this hemisphere, okay, in the northern hemisphere, in the wintertime, who live in Alaska, Scandinavian countries, Russia, they have tough times in the winter. They have very, very high rates of depression. One of the reasons is this reason. Dark all the time. Melatonin, always being released. This actually has a name. It's called seasonal affective disorder, SAD. S-A-D, seasonal affective disorder. And there's one treatment for it. You know what the treatment is? Get up in the morning and sit under these special lights. And you sit under the lights, and what happens is melatonin gets decreased and you start feeling better. It's a weird treatment, isn't it? Yeah, that doesn't happen a lot. It's usually the other way for this reason. I've heard of that, but I think it's more what I've heard about it's more this way than anything else that's there. Well, what may happen this week to us? I mean, it's supposed to be dark and dreary. It may snow tomorrow, right? Right through Friday, that's there. What you're going to find when we get a week of this stuff, by the end of the week, some of us are going, gosh, I'm going to see the sun again. What's going on? I'm kind of tired. It makes me kind of sleepy. This way. It's cold. I don't think I want to get out of bed. It's so dark out all the time. That's part of this. That's there. Overabundance of melatonin levels that are there may make you sleepy a lot. So don't live in Alaska during the wintertime, or Seattle, I guess. Okay, we live in a good place. We have a lot of sunny days, don't we? That seems to help us. In
the South Pole, there's I think about 3-5 days where the sun doesn't set.
Right.
So the opposite happen?
Well, yeah, the North Pole as well, right? I mean, it depends on which time of the year. The sun doesn't set at all. So what happens to those people, they have a hard time getting to sleep. And when you have a hard time getting to, maybe this is the connection, when you have a hard time getting to sleep, okay, there's increased levels of depression. Okay? By the way, when you have a hard time getting to sleep, then your cycles are off, right, completely. That then also is correlated with higher rates of drug abuse. If you look at some of the Scandinavian countries, Russia, Alaska, they have high rates of alcoholism, very high rates of alcoholism. Again, it's multivariables, right? It's not just this. There's probably a lot of other reasons for it. Still with me? All right, still focusing. So if you drifted away, you're pulling yourself back. For 1 point, overactivity of what gland leads to tenseness and excitability? Thymus, Thyroid, hormone, serotonin. So there are 3 key words, isn't this, to this one? 3 key words? Okay. You can talk to each other, it's okay. Some of you going, you can do that. Because if the other person knows it, then maybe they can explain it to you better than I did, and then you'll learn it. You have a question?
Yeah. So people with an overactive hypothalamus,
People who have an underactive hypothalamus will eat a lot, okay, but put on weight very, very quickly. People who have an overactive hypothalamus, now when we're doing hypothalamus, not thyroid. Okay? People who have an no, I can't say that, because we have different sections of the hypothalamus. Some sections will cause you to overeat, some sections will cause you to be full. So I can't say that.
Okay.
Right? Depends upon which section it is. Okay. All right, everybody get this one? All right, ready? Let's put in, well, come on, get ready. Put in your answers. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. Everybody got it? Okay. All right, so 90% of you are correct. Right. So there are 3 key terms to this, right? The first one is gland. Is gland. So you look through the answers. Is thymus a gland? Thyroid? Yes. Hormone, is that a gland? No, that's glands release hormones. Serotonin. So even if you didn't know the answer to this one, that's the only one that's a gland. Right? Then you go to which gland, tenseness and excitability, and it's the thyroid, and that'd be an overactive thyroid. Want another one? I finished this chapter, so I'm just giving you some review, okay, and some key questions. In higher animals, visible portions of the brain are covered with a wrinkled layer of gray matter called the what? The cerebral cortex, the cerebellum, the corpus callosum, or the forebrain. So I'm going to teach you once again how to do multiple choice questions. What you want to, even if you don't know what the answer is, you go, I don't know what the answer is, do a process of elimination. What did I say about the forebrain, the corpus callosum, the cerebellum, the cerebral cortex? Which one would be visible portions of that brain are covered with a wrinkled layer of gray matter? This whole thing here. I did mention this, but I mentioned it very, very quickly. If you came in late and you are doing the International Conversations Partners Program, I have your schedule here. You signed up for it. She's not going to get in touch with you. She got in touch with me, and this is your schedule. Okay, so come down after class and pick it up. All right, we got it? Well, let's get it. How much more are you going to think about it? Just put your answers in. Take a guess if you don't know it. Ready? Let's get to 52, right? 50, oh, got 53 now. 54, going once, going twice. 53, all right. Ooh, we're all over the place, huh? I guess this was a tough question. And the answer is the cerebral cortex. Now, I did say, when I said, let's talk about the cerebral hemispheres. And in the cerebral hemispheres, sometimes it's called the cerebrum. Sometimes you see it called the cerebral cortex. But what it is, it's all this area that's up there. Right? The cerebellum is going to be the lower part of your brain, just the little part back here for balance. The corpus callosum is the connecting tissue between the left and right hemisphere, and the forebrain would just be the information right here. Right? So make sure you write down this answer, because I told you once before, every once in a while I'll put some questions right on the test, right out of these PowerPoints. Where is the cerebellum? What's the definition? Cerebellum is in the back of your head, way back here in the hindbrain, and it controls body balance and coordination. That was the question we had about gymnasts, about how gymnasts probably have a better connectivity in their brains. All right, want one more? Now this one, next one that we're going to do is a difficult question. This is called an application question. You've got to be able to apply about 3 bits of information that we learned to solve this question. If a split-brain subject was given a key and they didn't see it, and you put it in their hand, in their left hand, to feel with their left hand, all right? So a split-brain person, okay, you have them touch a key, and their left, they don't look at it, they just say, look forward, touch this key, and they touch it with their left hand. He could easily name what he had touched. 2, would be unable to describe the object. 3, would be able to point to the key with his right hand. Or 4, would have to wait for the information transfer to take place before describing it. This is a hard one, so you need to... What's that? Well, that's what you're supposed to know. I'll tell you after this. And we covered it. Remember, this is for a point. You're supposed to be paying attention to all this. Come on, you're on the right track. He'll tell you. Yeah. This one you might want to talk to somebody about. You're on the right track, some of you, as I watch you do this stuff. This is a brain teaser or a frontal lobe teaser, all right? You're going to have to solve this with reasoning. Good. Sounds like you're teaching each other, right? Those of you who are watching this as a video didn't come to class. Therefore, you have nobody to talk to right now as you watch this. So you may get this question wrong. Come to class. That'll shock them, right? We got it? All right, let's get your answers in. I don't want to fall too far behind here. Just guess if you don't have it. Got it? All right. All right. Guess we didn't know this one that well, huh? There's the answer. Would be unable to describe the object. All right. Now, those of you who got it right should be very proud of yourself. This is a difficult question. All right. First one is split brain. Define that. Those are the people during the 1960s who had epilepsy, and they went in and they cut the corpus callosum, right? So they severed the hemispheres so the left and right hemisphere cannot communicate with each other, right? So you tell the person now to touch the key. The touching of the key goes, what? From the left hand to the right brain. So the only part of the brain that knows there's a key that there is the right brain. Which brain controls language? The left brain. So one could easily name what he has touched. No, the information's only up here. Corpus callosum has been cut, doesn't share the information. That's wrong. 3 would be able to point to the key with his right hand. Okay? Not really, okay? Not really, okay? The information comes up, okay? Comes here, comes to this part of the brain, but this part of the brain controls what hand? The left hand, not the right hand. So the left brain doesn't know what's going on, so they can't do it. Would have to wait for the information transfer to take place? No, it never will, because the corpus callosum's been cut. So there's only one answer, would be unable to describe the object, and they would do this. What do you touch?